When I remember, don't forget if you, it's all that is in your bulletin. Be sure you check your bulletin for announcements. You should also be getting an e-news email from me every week. And if you don't, that means we have your wrong email address or something's getting blocked. Do note, women's group and potluck also is after church next week. That is always open to visitors. And so if you're curious, just bring something to eat and join Gladys and the ladies in the fellowship hall after church. And I know that you'll be blessed when you do. So there are sermon notes in your bulletin. I hope that you will look at those. They're also going to be available online at our Facebook page or on our website. There are chapters for you to read every day this week. If you don't have a devotional guide on your own, I would say there are lots of apps that do it. You can get emails from all kinds of places now, or read these. And if you're doing this, I would encourage you, kind of read through the sermon notes, read the chapter, then go back to the sermon notes and kind of ask yourself, what is it in these scriptures? Well, maybe you'll never know, but what is it that Thomas is trying to pull out of these scriptures that relates to the theme of today's message or the theme of our sermon series? We're in a series called Embracing Life's Unknowns. And what I know for all of us in those unknowns is that the unknowns in life are the things that give us those biggest causes for concern, worry, angst, frustration, irritability, because we don't have a handle, we don't have control, right, of how the outcome is going to be. And that is very hard for us. And so James talked to you all a little bit last week about most of the unknowns in life. If we're able to have a little perspective, a lot of it is known. We kind of do know how to live this day. We do know about prayer and Bible study. We do know about loving the people that we've been blessed to love. We do know about loving God. And one of the hard things for us, we know this, you have 99 great things go on in a day, but you have one bad thing. What do you focus on? Y'all focus on the 99? Oh, wait, I forgot to tell you, you have to use your brain when you come to church. And so if you're half asleep, go back out, get some coffee. You're welcome to eat the coffee grinds. You may need it because it's just going to get worse from here. But anyway, shoo, y'all are a tough crowd. All right. But it's an important point. The human condition focuses on the problem. The human condition focuses on the criticism. The human condition focuses on the things that are wrong and not the things that are right. So when it comes to these unknowns in life, and I know many of you are dealing with these as we speak, the human condition wants to focus on what's not known, what can't be controlled, and what's going to happen if. And over and over and over again, Jesus calls us back, in a sense, to the center, where he says it isn't so much about the what ifs, it's about what is. And it is so critical for all of us to remember to think about what is, what we have been blessed with, what we have been told to do from Christ, rather than all the things that we wonder about in that future. And one of those things that we're going to add to the pie, in a sense, today is this. I shouldn't even be preaching on this because you talk about hypocrites in the church. Hypocrite number one, because y'all all ought to have patience. That's what y'all ought to do. So, maybe I ought to just leave. But it's true. Do you have patience when people look at you? Would they consider you a patient person? And if the answer is no, are you okay with that? Now, in some places of my life, I can say I've been somewhat patient. I mean, this is going to be, for me, going on my 14th year in this church. And I promise you the church isn't where I want it to be yet. Well, at what point do I say, you know what? We've arrived. We're done. There are things in my marriage, things in my house, things with our little new puppy dog. Oh, my goodness, you talk about patience. You ever been bitten by, I got scabs up and down my arms from this puppy dog. Every day for the past week as I'm learning about patience, I'm looking at this dog, and God's like, yep, patience, my friend. If you ever had a puppy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But amen. Well, I'm going to have another amen over there, but anyway. Here's the piece on this that's so important. Is patience a virtue in our society? Do we lift this up as a important standard to be living towards? Do you? I mean, do we look at our lives and we say, yes, it is wise to wait? 99% of the time. Yes, there are crises where you have to make a quick decision, but most of our decisions, we feel like they're crises, but they're not. The real reason we act so rashly and so quickly isn't because it's necessary. I would suggest to you it's because you just don't want to be frustrated and irritated anymore. You don't want to have that empty feeling in your heart. You don't want to have this unresolved problem anymore. And so by taking action, which is actually more of a reaction, I would suggest, we think that we're going to fix it. More often than not, you're making it worse. What am I talking about? Well, I want to walk through this scripturally, and then I just want to walk through it practically as well. But let's talk about a few examples. How many of you would consider yourself a patient driver? Literally, we all know this thing where y'all are all the perfect drivers. You're going the speed limit. Somebody gets right on your tail, and they're. I've gotten to where now I just pull over and let them go. And it is so ironic to me how every time they just speed by me, and then they're stuck in front of the person in front of them. And then I do kind of like getting real close to them, because in my head I'm like, nah, 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 Literally this week I saw a school bus, 2 cars in front of me, and this person's just all over me. And I was like, fine, just go on. And he's and gets behind the school bus. He's tailgating the school bus. Anyway, microwave culture. How many of you have ever put something in the microwave and you're watching from 27 seconds down and you're like, would you speed up? You know what I'm saying? You put the popcorn in or whatever and you're like 27, 26, 25, 24. We're like tired of the microwave because it's not fast enough. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. How about your purchases? How many of you look at whatever it is that you think you just need to buy and you're like, I should wait on that. I should pray about that. I'm going to take my time because maybe this isn't the right time to make this purchase. When's the last time we saw a car commercial saying, okay, here's the deal, folks. You probably don't need a car right now, but when you do, we hope you'll take some time to consider our vehicle because it really is the best. It just, all the marketing, don't you see, do we not see our society is geared, we thrive, we need, our economy, our government needs impatient purchases. If we all developed patience overnight and didn't make the next spontaneous expenditure, our economy would go, pfft. What is debt about for the most part? It is. Now, there are times, and I think you could make an argument in our world, where mortgages and stuff like that, where debt is okay. But in general, why do we have credit and all this stuff? It's because we don't want to wait for whatever it is. I need it now. And our world literally has made that a possibility. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? The definition of patience is something like this. You never get annoyed or irritated by not being in a hurry. You never get annoyed or irritated by having to wait. Is that you? I could throw this one in with marriage as well. We have issues with spouses, and this is one reason why the divorce rate is so much higher for newly married people. Usually, if you make it past a couple years, you're doing pretty well, and you're probably going to make it. Why? Because you've developed this idea of patience. It's like, yeah, I hate your guts now, but I know, with time, we're going to work through this because we have something deeper that is a glue that holds us together. Now, that's not always the case. But there's something to be said that long-term marriages are patient marriages. Because you realize your marriage goes through cycles and phases, and sometimes you really hate each other, and sometimes you really love each other, and sometimes you're like, whatever. But you're always kind of moving upward and forward together, realizing that the greater goal is to share life till death do we part, to have each other at a bedside when you're sick, and dying or whatever. But man, that requires a lot of patience. Where are our models for patience in society? Where are our models of patience in television, in the movies, in marketing? Who are your models for patience when it comes to your influences, parents, teachers, friends? There aren't many, are there? There just really aren't. So in Luke chapter 4, Jesus, in a passage many of us are familiar with, is his temptations. One of the lenses by which to look at the temptations of Jesus is how he's teaching us literally about the importance of patience. And in Luke 4, I'll just read the whole thing to us because it's important. Because these lessons from God himself in the person of Christ are game changers if we can hear the lessons to be learned. Jesus returned from the Jordan River. He was full of the Holy Spirit. He just had that heart, it was awesome, experience with the Father. And immediately, he was led into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil for 40 days. One of the things I know, by the way, time and time again, and I've seen this with many of you, I've talked through many of you with this, and I can always see it's deer in the headlights because it's like, well, surely that's not going to be me. And I'm like, oh, I guarantee you. Whenever anybody is full of the Spirit and starts really getting their lives right with the Lord, especially for the first time, you are about to be just attacked in ways that you never understood before. Because the last thing Satan wants is for you to get your life right with God. There's a great book by C.S. Lewis, The Screwtape Letters, that talks about this process. But it's just the idea that, look, if you're already right with God, you're going to be a hard sell. But if you're just on the fence, oh my goodness, let's just inundate them with a bombardment. Anyway, be careful when you first accept Christ. Because you were once lost. And believe me, Satan doesn't want to lose you. And he's going to do what he can to keep you. Spiritual warfare is real, my friends. Anyway, so here's Jesus, tempted for 40 days by the devil. He ate nothing during those days, and afterwards Jesus was starving. I'm going to suggest that all of us take a couple days when Lent starts to have some type of a fast for just like 2 days. It is amazing, even when you can eat all the vegetables and drink all the juice you want, 2 days of that and you're already starving. Jesus was really hungry, and that's an important point to remember. So the devil says in verse 3, "Since you are God's son, command this stone to become a loaf of bread." Jesus replies, "It's written, people will not live alone by bread or by bread alone." Of course, this was the bread of life we're talking about. Anyway, next the devil led him to a high place and showed him in a single instant all the kingdoms of the world. And the devil says, "I will give you this whole domain, all of it, and the glory of all these kingdoms. It's been entrusted to me." Who entrusted it to him? Isn't that weird? Ironic? I can give it to anyone I want, but of course Jesus is vulnerable because he's really hungry. "If you will just worship me, it'll all be yours now, instantly." Jesus says, "It's written, you will worship the Lord your God and serve only him." The devil brings Jesus to Jerusalem, stands him up at the highest point of the temple, and he said to him, "Since you are God's son, jump." Jump. "For it's written, he will command his angels concerning you to protect you, and they will take you up in their hands so that you won't even hit your foot on a stone." And Jesus says, "Don't test God." And the devil left until the next opportunity. He was coming back. Just a couple quick points, and I do hope you'll go home and ponder this. First, temptation. If you're the Son of God, turn this stone to bread. Why would that be tempting to Jesus? And you're like, because he's hungry, right? Okay. But do you think Jesus didn't realize at some point he's going to eat again? I want to say this again. Y'all make the gears start working. Do you think that Jesus knew he was going to eat again? Yes. So if you know you're going to eat again, is it really tempting if the devil says, hey, turn this stone to bread so you can eat now? And the answer is yes. Very tempting. Why? Why? We're talking about the enfleshment of God who created the universe here. I mean, this was the dude. Through Jesus, all of it came to be. And when the devil said, Jesus is looking at a rock in the shape of a bread, he's like, oh, it looks so delicious. You know, and Satan's like, all you got to do, turn it to bread. And Jesus was tempted because he could have done it. Was eating bread really the problem here? No. The problem was the timing. The timing. Why do we care? Well, I could go through a couple things, and I think I just might actually. One, the obvious one is improper purchases. There are lots of things in our lives that it's fine for you to buy them, just not now. There are lots of things in life that in and of themselves, they're not evil or bad things. They're just bad for you. When? At this time. Premarital sex. Look, God gave us the gift of marriage and lots of stuff, but it's the timing. And I'm not going to get into all the reasons why it's wrong and bad for you, but believe me, when God gives us mandates, it's to protect us from something. So it's really the timing of the thing that is the issue. In so many cases with our lives today, the issue isn't not always, right? But the issue isn't necessarily if the thing that you're looking at or wanting to do is wrong in and of itself. But it is wrong for you at this or that time. Now, I want to ask you a question. If it is wrong for you in or that time, but you're starving for it, do you see the problem? This is real stuff, people. This is everyday life. It doesn't get any more relevant than this. The point is, Jesus himself was starving. So there are things in this world, maybe it's not bread, maybe it is the car, maybe it's the house, maybe it is, I need to get married, maybe it is, I need to get unmarried. I don't know what it is. But you've got this uneasiness within you. It is a craving, it's an insatiable appetite, it is starvation, and you really believe, you totally believe that if you turn this stone to bread, in other words, that you just go ahead and take the plunge, that it's going to fill your hunger. Because that's what the world says. And that's what you have been, I would say, encultured to believe. And Jesus rebukes that. Jesus says that is not the way to fill your hunger. Going into debt is not going to fill your hunger. Just getting married or just getting a divorce or just whatever, y'all see what I'm talking about, that's not the real issue here. And until you address the real issue, nothing outside of you is going to fill the hunger inside of you. Patience. Patience. Because in that moment where you stop and start thinking, okay, wait a minute. Why do I really want this? Why do I really want this to happen or want to undo? It's in that moment of silence, in that moment of patience that you begin to think it through and begin to ask God, what's your will for me in this situation? And I promise you, if you ask God, I don't need to promise you, James says it, if you ask God for wisdom, he's going to give it to you. And one of the things we often hear God say when we ask God for wisdom in those areas, you know what God says? No. And part of us doesn't want to hear that either, which is part of the reason we don't want to have patience, because we're hungry. Temptation 2. Worship me and all the kingdoms of the world will be yours. Aren't all the kingdoms of the world Jesus is already? So how is this one tempting? Come on, he's Jesus. Why? He was starving. He was fasting. He was literally in this place where mentally and physically he was so utterly drained. He was just at the very end of his rope. I mean, this would be the worst it was for him until the end, when it was the worst. Just imagine fasting for a week, people. Just imagine fasting. You know what? Just don't eat the rest of the day. Tell me how you feel tonight at the Super Bowl chili. You're like, oh, I'm so hungry. I want some chili. Don't eat lunch and just come see how much chili you eat. You'll be like, I judge them all a perfect 10. Look, ruling the world was not the problem. It was that Jesus, in his moment of hunger, and in a sense, in his moment of pain, because hunger is pain, he was presented with an option to circumvent the pain and the suffering. Y'all see? I mean, the temptation is, look, Jesus, you don't have to go through all this. You don't have to go through the cross. Satan knew what was happening. You just worship me now, and it's all yours, and you're done. But Jesus said no. Jesus had patience. Jesus said, I will wait for my kingdom until its proper time. And he also knew, let's let it be silent for a second, because what I'm about to say is important. By waiting, he was opening the door for more suffering. He was opening the door to say, I'm willing to wait to go through the risk of betrayals by my friends, to go through all that happened with the cross, so that the ultimate goal would be realized. Patience. No pain, no gain. We know this, don't we? What in life have you ever had that was just given free and clear with no work that was worth anything to you? Nothing. It can be as small as a little puppy dog, or it can be as big as a church, or as big as whatever. Marriage is the same. Your relationship to your children is the same. I mean, this is everywhere you look. You want to have good grades in school, what do you have to do? You have to study. You want to be in shape? You got to go work out, and you got to eat right. I mean, you don't have exceptions to this. Why do we think that there are certain things in life where God's concerned or where life is concerned that, well, where this is concerned, it's going to be easy? Well, because it's me. You know, my marriage is going to be easy. Well, because it's me. I mean, look at me. I mean, no. And why do we think it's going to happen quickly? Who amongst us has had any relationship in life that after the first visit you were best friends forever? No. Love at first sight? No. I'm sorry. Lust at first sight? Fair. Love? No. Love is something that is earned. Love is something that is sacrificed. Love is something that requires monumental amounts of effort. It takes time. And it takes risk. And you can't take risks, you can't take time if you're not being patient. You can't have all the kingdoms of the world in an instant. It's not the way it works. Third temptation. The devil leads Jesus to the pinnacle of the temple and he says, jump. Many ways to interpret this, but one is the devil saying, just quit. Jump and let the angels take care of you and just be done with this thing. Seriously. And you're like, well, why would that be tempting for Jesus? Well, Jesus knew he was going to be crucified. If you knew you were going to be crucified, say, in 3 years, just say 3 years. If you live In 3 years, you're going to be crucified. And somebody said, we can take care of that right now. All you got to do is jump. You'd be tempted, especially if you're in a weakened state. How often are we tempted to quit? 1 Corinthians 13. Y'all have heard it before. Love is patient. It's the first one. But no, it's not that one. Let's not do that one. Love is love. Let's just stick with that. Love is love. No. The first one, love is patient. I challenge all of you who have any relationship with anybody to go home and think about, what does that mean? Love is patient. Well, let's talk about impatience. I've worked real hard on this. Being annoyed and irritated and provoked by having to wait on someone else to do something you want them to do or be. How many of you have been impatient with a friend? How many of you have been impatient? If your spouse is here, then don't raise your hand. With your spouse. How many of you have been impatient with your parents? With your coworkers? With your pastor who won't hurry up and end the sermon? Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere you look. We get most impatient, by the way, with the people we love the most. Have you noticed that? And right after love is patient, you get love is not irritable. Why is that? Because we're irritated when we get impatient. So he starts with love is patient. What is patience? It is not getting annoyed, not getting irritated by having to wait on somebody who's not fulfilling your expectations at the time. Ouch. Let me give you some Thomas reasons why I think, remember my philosophy, which I actually think is God's philosophy, but whenever God gives us rules, they're for our benefit. All this God's on a, yapping down rules to us because God's bored and wants to stir up the ant mound, that is so dumb. God gives us rules to help us because God loves us and God wants us to experience love and joy and peace and kindness and all the good stuff called abundance. So why would God say, you need to be patient everywhere, with your marriage, with your job, with your kids, with your parents, with your money, with all of it? Well, if you rush to make a decision because you're annoyed and irritated and provoked by having to wait on somebody else who isn't meeting your expectation, what are your chances of making a good decision or the best decision? As opposed to if you take your time and you pray and you seek discernment and you're really trying to work through the pros and the cons and the rights and the wrongs, how much better do you think your decision is going to be? Many of you know, because you've talked to me, there have been a lot of people come and say, I'm thinking about divorce. I'm like, I know, everybody is. Well, what do you think, Thomas? Y'all all know this if you talk to me. The first thing I say is don't make any rash decisions. Be patient. Never make a knee-jerk reaction because you're irritated, annoyed, or provoked. Whatever you do, you be certain that you have worked it through carefully with prayer and discernment, that you have sought consensus with people you trust, so that whatever decisions you make, you are as certain as you possibly can be that you are making the decision based off of wisdom and God's guidance instead of your irritations and annoyances. Who thinks that they can make the best decision anywhere in your life when you are starving? Who thinks you can make the best decisions when you're annoyed and irritated? It just makes sense, doesn't it? Wait. Do not be rushed. Don't let them or the world rush you into making decisions before you and God have figured out what the best decision is. Short-term rewards are almost never worth it. There are crisis decisions that have to be made short-term. I get that. So it's a general statement. But short-term rewards are almost never worth it. It sabotages so much. Long-term benefits are worth every drop of energy that you put into waiting. Isaiah 40, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. The implication is while you're waiting, you're annoyed and you're irritated and you're hungry. But if you wait on the Lord, long term, you're going to find your strength, right? It is renewed. You wait on the Lord, that insatiable appetite, it's gnawing at you because you're so tired of it. What you're going to find in the Lord is that gnawing sensation is filled with bread of life and living water, which gives you the actual tools to not only cope with the irritation or frustration, but to navigate the best path through it. So when you're on the other side, there's so much less regret and so much less guilt. Finally, patience requires faith. Doesn't it? I mean, because what you're basically saying is, I'm not going to do this now, I'm not going to act on this now, I'm not going to say this now, because I have faith that if I follow God through this, God's going to show me a better way. When we are impatient, here's kind of how I put it. When we're impatient, we jump to that conclusion. I hear God saying, wait, I'm not done. Yo, stop. I'm still. And then, we close the door in God's face. He's like, oh, clearly you're done. I wasn't done. I had lots more to do. But obviously, this is about you, isn't it? It's not about me. Application. One of the reasons, and I can't point at everybody, you need a daily devotional, people. Me too. Devotionals require you to have patience. You have to be able to say, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to wait on all the urgent stuff so I can take care of the important stuff. Devotionals remind us every day, that the best decisions are made when we have the right mindset about those decisions, not when we're rushed, annoyed, and irritated. And I guarantee you, every single day, we are making important decisions whether we realize it or not. And what we say, how we think, and how we behave. How about you? When you look over the past 7 days, does Jesus look at you and say, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been so patient. Let me help you with that. When you look over the last 7 days and the various annoyances and irritations and frustrations you've been facing, have you sought the Lord's will? Have you sought the consensus of other people you trust? Have you really worked hard to get outside of the annoying feelings and be thinking with a clear mind, God, what is your will for me regarding this situation? Folks, there is a better way to live our lives, but I am increasingly convinced we will never discover it if we're always in a hurry. You're not going to do it. God doesn't scream and yell, and God doesn't try to, keep up with us when we're going 800 miles an hour. I get the feeling God's kind of beside us saying, hey, when you're ready to slow down, I'm willing to talk. When you're willing to listen, I'm willing to speak. And when you're willing to seek, I'm willing to show you the way to find what you really want. We're going to have a moment of invitation now. It's going to be real brief. We're going to kind of end services new. No, we're not singing Just As I Am 800 times. But I am going to ask Dan and James if they come stand up here. Here's what I want to do. I want you to just think about for 30 seconds. How is the Lord speaking to you through this message today? What are the things in your life that you are annoyed about, that you're frustrated about, that you're hurting through? If some of those things you're like, man, I'm just broken over this, they are totally willing to pray with you, and you're welcome to come up here. Spend as much time with them as you want. If you need to accept Christ or you need a spiritual growth plan, just ask. I make myself available to meet with anybody who asks. You just have to ask. I can't read minds. But for 30 seconds, what's the Lord wanting you to take home with you today? What's the action item? What's the thing that God's put on your heart? Lord, thank you so much for today. We are all an impatient people. We want it now, and we want it our way. Actually, we want it yesterday. Help us, God, because you know we struggle. For everybody here, for those with us online, for people you know we love and care for, just for all of us, give us a little bit better clarity and perspective on your will for us in these areas of life. That we could have patience and endurance and self-control, that we could keep the main thing, and remember that actually what matters is following you all along the way. I pray for everyone here that they would know your peace which surpasses all comprehension. I pray for all of us that we would know that height and that depth and that width and that breadth of your love for us. That we might be filled with your light of the world, that as we leave this place, we would be your light of the world, starting with the people in our homes, extending to our neighbors and our friendships and our family, and all the people that we run across this week, that we would be good and faithful stewards of all your blessings. In your name, Jesus. Amen. All right, so here's how we're going to end. We're going to stand, and I would ask, now if you're an introvert, just run for the hills. That's okay. You notice we didn't have a fellowship time in the beginning. We're not going to do it then anymore. We're going to do it now. And what I would like is you would find one person, just one, that you don't know, and if nothing else, before you leave, shake their hand and say, God bless you. I hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you next Sunday. If you like to talk, then just talk at it. While you're standing, if any of you want to pray with these guys, this is a wonderful resource. Come up here and pray. So let's all stand together. Find somebody you don't know, shake their hand. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.